I know I have not posted a video in a few days. I had a lot of stuff going on. I do apologize for that, but in those days, this was confirmed. The standard banner is coming on March 14th. Now, I did have an inkling of this when I saw that the pity transfer was coming on the 14th, because if you look at the JP timeline, those two things came out at the same time. So at the time of making that video, I did say this was probably coming out at the same time. However, at the time of making that pity transfer video, right, this was not yet confirmed. So very happy to see this is confirmed. And today I want to talk about which of these characters is going to be the most important for you to get, and even more importantly, which of these characters you actually want to try and get dupes for. Because if you guys listen to the advice that I gave way back at the beginning, the launch of the game, to save your tickets, I know a lot of people are going to have a lot of tickets to spend, and some people might even be able to pity like twice or 3 times. It just depends on how many tickets you saved up. So hopefully this goes really well for you guys and you got all the characters you need and the characters you want. Now, with that said, with the standard banner update, I do have to remind you guys that it's not only these characters on the standard banner, it is all of the original characters as well. So you have Gojo, you have Megami, right? You have Green Nanami, Green Itadori. So that's going to kind of probably throw off your summons a little bit. Not to mention, now you're not only pulling for characters, but you're also pulling for all the original recollections, which could be good. It could be like non-standard, Unity from top to bottom, stuff like that. Or it could be bad if you have those duped out. But you do have these recollections added as well. So it's going to make it even harder to pull these new characters. Okay, so keep in mind, just because these characters are being added to the standard banner, if you only have a couple of tickets, don't expect to get exactly what you want. Now, if you have enough to go to pity once, I would expect that you get most of these characters, right? If you have enough to go to pity twice, you should have every single character. So today we're going to talk about like which characters you want to get dupes for, which characters you want to get at least one copy in general. Like sometimes it's nice to have more than one copy, but I'll put the characters that it's not necessary to have dupes for here, and then the characters that shouldn't matter at this point. So number one, I'm going to put Gojo. This seems kind of silly, but I'm going to put him at doesn't matter right now. Pretty much every character that was in the original pool, I'm going to put at doesn't matter. The reason being is because, well, actually, I can't really say that. I'm going to put, okay, now I'm going to put him here. I'm going to put him here, dupes. Technically, you want Gojo 5 duped, okay? But for anybody that's been playing for a while, take this into account. He's not going to matter to you, okay? If you've been playing for a while and you have him duped already, like a lot of people do, it doesn't matter. But assuming, let's just say this tier list is assuming that you don't have any of these characters, right? You do want to have Gojo 5 duped. So that is a character you're going to want, okay? There we go. Just to make the tier list more fair. Now, as for Megami, I'm going to put in it doesn't matter. Even with the updates, like in the future of JP, I don't think he's going to be necessary. He's a blue type character. Sukuna comes out. Sukuna is insane. Nobody's going to need Megami. Now, it might be nice to have a copy of him because he does get better with the update, but I don't think you need at least one copy, okay? So I'm going to put him in doesn't matter. Yes, he does get buffed later, but he's definitely not buffed right now. Definitely not going to be that useful at all on global right now. Blue Itadori is one of the newer units that is being added to the standard banner. Blue Itadori is actually a pretty decent character when it comes to giving ultimate gauge to other characters that are attacking behind him. So like if you run this Itadori and this Gojo together, it actually makes for a really good blue team. Or you could run this blue Itadori and Kamo, or you could run Nishimiya, then blue Itadori, then Kamo or Gojo. Like, he's just a really good support / attacker unit. Like, he does pretty good damage himself and can support and fits well on a blue team. So I would say at least one copy. You don't need to have dupes into him for him to be good. Now, are dupes nice? Yes, it's nice to have dupes for him if you can get them, because it's going to give you extra damage. Remember, he is an attacker character, so that's going to give him extra damage, extra HP. It's always good to have dupes for characters, but, you know, minimum, I would say at least one copy for this character. Now, as for Kamo's only real saving grace, in my opinion, is this ultimate. His ultimate can do a pretty massive amount of damage, but the rest of his skills, in my opinion, are kind of lackluster. Now, is one of the characters that gets buffed in the future, but the buff was pretty minuscule and not all that useful, and kind of in the same vein as Megami. He's a blue attacker type unit. Why would you choose Kamo when you have Gojo to choose, who has the AoE ultimate, does just as much damage as Kamo, and Kamo's is only single target, or when Sukuna is going to come out in the future, right? So realistically, I'm going to say Kamo doesn't matter. Any of these characters, you could argue, though, it's at least nice to have one copy. But realistically, in the grand scheme of trying to get through content in the game and trying to get through Illusory Tower, he's not necessary, okay? The only reason he'd be necessary is if you're missing out on Gojo right here, or if you don't get Sukuna in the future when he comes out. Next up, we have Nishimiya. Nishimiya, I would say you definitely want at least one copy. While this is a essential character to have because she's a really good buffer, I don't think it's necessary to have her duped out. Yes, duping a character out does give them extra stats. It gives them extra curse technique, taijutsu technique, and HP, I believe, if I remember right off the top of my head. The only thing that really matters to her duping her out, though, is going to be the HP, right? So extra HP is good because that gives her more survivability as a support character, but she's never going to do the most damage, so giving her extra stats, extra damage isn't going to make that big of a difference. So duping her out completely, I wouldn't say is necessary. The only characters you ever really want to like focus on getting to 5 dupes are going to be your big damage characters like Gojo right here. And then we have Todo. I mean, if you want a screensaver, like, you should get a copy of him because his screensaver is great. But realistically, as a character, terrible character, gets buffed in the future. Terrible buff, not enough. They just need to do something with this character. He literally does not matter. I still want him, did not get him, but realistically you do not need him. And then we have Hollow Purple Gojo. Hollow Purple Gojo, I actually highly recommend getting dupes into this character because having at least one copy just isn't enough. In Illusory Tower, specifically Illusory Tower stage 45, in case you want to know what stage it is, because just having one dupe into him, now with the increased level, it's a little bit easier, or having no dupes into him, now with the increased level, it's a little bit easier, but I would recommend having at least one dupe into him, because that's going to be a big damage boost to him and make him a lot more useful. So even just having one dupe into this character makes him so much more usable and so much better. Ideally though, of course, 5 dupes is where you want to be on either of these characters right here. Gojo's just insane. So highly recommend duping out Green Gojo. If you're able to get him, the more copies you get of that, you should be happy about. Green Itadori. If you happen to pull Green Itadori, he was the carry for Green Illusory Tower stages for a while if you did not have Hollow Purple Gojo, but then there's just some stages that he cannot overcome right now on Global. In the future, both him and Nanami actually get pretty decent buffs that make them better. However, for like him, it's just hard to compete with an AoE ultimate that does, 10 million damage or however much it does, depending on how you run the character. He can do damage, but I don't feel like, the single target damage is enough to make up for the fact that that Hollow Purple Gojo has an AoE. So realistically, for Itadori, I'm going to say it doesn't matter in comparison to Gojo, because if you have Gojo, you don't need Itadori. Okay, I'm just going to put it out there. I know there's going to be people that get mad about that. People that love Itadori think he's the GOAT. But if you have Hollow Purple Gojo, he doesn't matter. And then Nanami is kind of a similar situation. However, I will give Nanami, he can be a decent like sub DPS if you wanted to run 2 DPS characters. Same thing with Itadori, really. I think they're good sub DPS characters, but as your main damage dealers, if you're just running them as a damage dealer, like is required a lot of times in Illusory Tower when you set up your teams, it's not going to work out super well for you, or it's going to be super hard or super RNG dependent for if you clear those stages. So I also have to put him into doesn't matter. Once again, they get buffed, they get much better in the future. You could argue that it's worth having a copy of them, but if we're just talking purely about game content and clearing game content, I don't think it's necessary to have even a copy of them if you want to clear game content, as long as you have, Hollow Purple Gojo up here. Panda, same thing. Absolutely does not matter. Not a super useful character. One of the more interesting characters in terms of kit design, being able to be an offensive and defensive character. Still one of the better tanks in the game, but tanks just aren't really relevant in the game is the problem. It's all about nuking damage. Maybe eventually there will be a need for more tanks in the game, maybe like EX stages, I guess, in story mode. Sometimes you need a tank. He could be decent for that, but in my opinion, like Junpei's a better tank than Panda here, because Junpei can at least nullify attacks. So I'm not the biggest fan of like Panda's tanking anyways, so realistically I don't think he is going to matter either, because he's just kind of in that weird spot where he's not really a defender, not really an attacker, and he just kind of does a subpar job at both. Maki, red characters, right? If we're talking about red characters, got a lot of them here actually at a line, but Toji, if you have Toji from the hidden inventory, you definitely don't need Maki, right? If you have Red Nobara is going to be an infinitely better choice than Maki. So realistically, Maki doesn't matter. You shouldn't be worrying about getting any copies of her. These characters right here, in my opinion, that doesn't matter. If you pulled them and you already have them, that's when I feel like you get upset, because it's like you really don't need these characters. Now, if it's your first time getting the character, it's like, oh, okay. I mean, at least it's a new character, but you know, if you already have them, it's just not really worth it. And then you have Red Nobra. Red Nobra, I would say, honestly, once again, I lean towards not really worth it with Toji existing at this point in the game. However, not everybody is going to have Toji, so I'm going to make this argument because hidden inventory has not come back, at least at the point of recording this video, right? This could be a decent character for some people. I think it's smart to have a copy of Red Nobra potentially to help get you through some of that content in the game that does require a red DPS character, especially if you don't have like Yuta being limited, right? So it's either the top red characters are Yuta or Toji, and if you don't have them, I think it's good to have a general pool DPS like her. I think it's nice to have at least one copy. My personal opinion. There is an argument to say she doesn't matter if you have either of those characters, but for now, I'll put her there. Then we have Red Panda. Red Panda, another tank, not good at all right now on global. He gets a massive buff in the future. That buff is live on JP. Right now, he's only able to draw aggro of one enemy. He'll be able to draw aggro of all enemies if you upgrade his skill all the way to level 10, which does take a lot of resources. So that's a big buff, but it's kind of a commitment as well. He is one of the best tanks in the game in the future, in my opinion, but once again, he doesn't nullify attacks. He can heal, but I still think attack nullification from Junpei is technically better, and Junpei also gets buffs in the future, by the way, FYI. So I put Panda at doesn't matter. Like, if we're just talking in terms of tanking at this point, like, these two tanks don't matter as much in my opinion, and that leads me into Junpei. I'm actually going to do Junpei next. I think it's nice to have one copy of Junpei, having used him on JP quite a bit to carry you through EX stages and stuff like that in story mode. I think he is actually a very, very decent tank with his ability to nullify attacks. He can save you from a lot of heartache and a lot of trouble, and yes, it may take you more turns to clear a stage, being that you're running a defender type unit instead of a support buffer type unit who, you know, you would use to do the nuking of the stage, but not everybody's going to have like great nukers. Not everybody's going to have hollow purple gojo, blue gojo, whatever. So if you have one of these kind of subpar DPS characters like Red Nobra and you just need to make it work, I think Junpei is actually a fairly decent tank with his ability to nullify attacks. Now moving on to Todo, I'm just going to do I need to explain Todo? I don't feel like I need to explain Todo. They've done every Todo in this game so far so freaking dirty, man. It absolutely disgusts me. I want a good Todo in the game so badly. And then we have, I mean, Shibuya's coming out, so maybe we'll get a good Shibuya Todo. Then we have Red Itadori. Red Itadori is kind of in that same vein as Blue Itadori, just like, or Nishimiya. Whenever you have a good support character, you're going to want at least a copy of the support character. I shouldn't say he's like Nishimiya because he's an attack type character like Blue Itadori. Blue Itadori and Red Itadori, basically the same freaking thing. Slightly different abilities, but they work for their respective classes. So Red Itadori buffs red characters, Blue Itadori for blue characters. Pretty straightforward for that. And then Mechamaru is actually going to be a decent break character in the future as far as yellow characters go. If you need someone who's going to be able to get down break bars, which can sometimes be important, I would argue, in Illusory Tower, I actually would say this one might be controversial, but I would actually say get a copy of Mechamaru. I think having a copy of him could be good because the buff he gets in the future is massive, and him having that break damage can actually be really good for like a yellow team, or when you have a yellow stage that you need to take on an Illusory Tower. I think he will find some uses there for you potentially. Megumi is a support type attacker unit, so anytime you have an attacker unit, like I said, you want them to be kind of duped out. I would say people use him more for support. Actually, I don't know. I can't really. People use him for both. People use him for as an attack, like main attacker unit. Sometimes people use him as like a sub attacker unit as support. But overall, I don't think it's bad to dupe him out. I think it's really good to dupe him out, because he can do so much damage, especially when his domain expansion is up, to upgrade his damage overall. It's definitely worth it to get him as many dupes as you possibly can, in my opinion. Then we have Yellow Nobra. Yellow Nobra, this one's tough. Okay, so like if you don't have a hidden inventory Gojo, or you don't have Yellow Nanami, or you don't have Yellow Megumi, which, you know, you should now that he's going to the standard banner, I think Nobra is a decent sub DPS. However, now that all of those characters I just listed are out, I would say she technically, like, she has to go down here and doesn't matter anymore. I think Mechamaru even has more uses than her with the break damage. I was just debating that in my head. I'm like, can I really put her down here when Mechamaru's up there? But yeah, I think Mechamaru still has more uses overall. Don't get me wrong, Nobara can do really good damage. She carried me through a lot of Illusory Tower stages before Hidden Inventory Gojo came out, and I used her in tandem, honestly, with Megumi. Like, it had to be Megumi and her, but it was too RNG dependent. It was very hard to clear some of those stages, and I feel like she just lacks a little bit of that damage that other characters will have. And keep in mind, Mechamaru and Nobara are two totally different characters. He's here because of his break damage. No other yellow character really is like focused on break damage, and she's here because she just does straight up damage, but her damage isn't enough. It isn't reliable. You have to get nail stacks. So that's why I would say she's not as good as other choices nowadays. A few months ago, before the standard banner update, I would say she was a decent character. And then last but not least, we have Yellow Inumaki. Yellow Inumaki actually gets buffed in the future where he can keep an ally alive for up to 3 times. Right now, he can only do it for 1 time. So if an ally is about to die, he'll save them once. Right now, that's not great. That's the only thing he's good for. Outside of that, in the future, that buff can be kind of worth it, but like, why would I need to save an ally if I can just run Junpei? I think of Inumaki more as like a defender unit type in a way. So I would put him in doesn't matter realistically as well. He's not better than Junpei, and I would rather just defend with Junpei and nullify attacks than have a character almost die and only be able to protect them from dying 3 times, and then his usefulness is up and he's not really a great character anymore. So in general, out of all the new characters that are coming to the standard banner pool, along with the characters that were already there, because these characters once again are gonna still be there, these are the characters that I would dupe out. These are the characters that I would get at least a copy of, and then if you get any of these other characters, like if you get 1 copy of it, it's like, okay, cool, but really none of these characters matter for clearing content in the game right now or in the future, at least up to where JP is at. So hopefully that helps you guys out with figuring out kind of what characters you're aiming to get on the standard pool banner. Let me know down in the comments which one of these characters are you most excited for, and it can definitely be one of the doesn't matter characters. Maybe you just didn't have them and you just want them, you know. Let me know down in the comments, and also let me know if you disagree with any of my placements. These once again are all pretty much my opinions, so feel free to disagree in the comments. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, please consider hitting that like button, and if you're not already subscribed, please consider hitting that as well. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. Peace.